moving up from under 13s to under 14s. Just quickly a bit about me, if you didn't know already. I've been editor of Rugby Coach Weekly. This in September, it will be 20 years since we actually produced our very first issue of something called Rugby Coach, and just before England went off and won a World Cup, actually. So maybe that's good news for England, though we're not sure from last weekend's efforts. I've been coaching, as it says, for 30 years across a whole range of different levels. Coached in schools, RGS Guildford and Cranley. So I was with the under 12s, under 16s, and then I was director of rugby at Cranley. Then when I went full-time working on Rugby Coach Weekly, or the versions of it, I coached Mumbles under 6s through to under 16s with my son. So that was an adventure and journey, and learned a lot from that. Also worked with the Ospreys, Welsh women. I went to a World Cup in 2010 with them, and Swansea Schoolboys under 15s, and then back in Bristol now with the Bristol Bears Junior Academy. So it's under 14s through to under 16s. I think the main thing is that what I'm going to try and offer is some ideas and some thoughts around some of the different approaches that you can take to under 14s this year. The main thing is that we keep a conversation going, and that you can maybe take some of these ideas and say, yeah, I want to run with them, or they challenge me to think in a different way, or I want to do something differently. So this is not the end of the conversation. I want you to try and interact as much as possible, either through this or afterwards on email, and really happy to pick up and take things on from there. We're obviously going to have a quick look at the new laws, some of the key things that you need to focus on once you've got the new laws in place, and some of the things you should be doing already. Some start to think about what I said, a tactical approach, whereas under 13s, you may have had some tactics in place, but now we're going to start thinking more tactically about how we're going to play. It's not going to be a massive thing, but it is an important thing for our players to consider. And inevitably, as they get a bit older, they create a few extra things for us to think about in terms of managing them and managing ourselves within those situations. I probably say this more and more as we go down the ages, but certainly when I first started out, I imagined rugby at under 14s or under 13s or under 12s to look completely different to what the reality was. And we have to make sure that we understand in our own minds what it's going to look like for our team. What's the reality of it? And I think if we start to do that, that really helps us pick on some of the key things that will make a difference during the season. Now, you see, I've put a Jamboard up on there so I can start to write on it. And I'm going to make a sense of their journey. And when I say their journey, I probably also mean our journey, because we're all changing as coaches, becoming a bit more experienced. So we fit into their journey. And one of the things I say is that we should ask the players what they think winning is, or what they think training is about, but they also should be, you should be offering them the opportunity to say, what can I do to support you? Now, that's quite a tough question for many 30-year-olds to answer. And it's still worth asking, because they may say, oh, I want to become more skillful, or I want to become fitter, or I want to play for England, or I want to do this, I want to do that. And then you've got a better insight into perhaps what you can do to help that on. It becomes more important under 15s, even more important under 16s, but you can start that conversation. And it's therefore important to understand that this is still a game of rugby, but it's under 14s rugby. And that means that the picture of how we play is going to be different. The main things is that you will see that the nines, that's the scrum half, their length of pass will not be very far. So that changes the start of the game that we'd expect. So the nines pass isn't too far. With a wider pitch, it's amazing how no one uses the wider pitch. The ball doesn't get moved there. More likely, a very fast runner will probably exploit that. Now, that's the reality of it. Do we coach our team to use a fast runner? Probably a little bit, probably not, depends. But we just need to know that sometimes a fast runner will dominate a part of the game, and that's not to make it about that player. We've got to think beyond that. So if one or two players are dominating the game, fine. Let's think about everybody when we are working on the skills and development, because as anyone who's been through this journey with the players will know, there is plenty of opportunity for players to change. And this is a really big thing in boys rugby. They'll be changing size very fast. Some of these boys will look like 15, 16, 17-year-olds already. And others will, their voices won't have broken. They'll just look like little kids playing with the big kids. So we've got to picture what that looks like and make it more real rather than trying to overdo what we're going to put in place. Now, does winning matter? And the answer is yes. Of course it does. If we don't understand that winning matters and think that it's just going to play in a manner which, okay, we're fine, we don't mind losing, that sort of thing, then we won't approach the emotional roller coaster that winning brings. The reality is that overall for us as coaches, it shouldn't matter. More importantly is, what does winning look like? Now, you will look at last year's fixture card, and let's say it's a 50-50 win-losses. So a win might be beating a side that you beat last year, and a loss may be beating a side that you didn't beat last year or reducing the deficit. But it also might mean that you're playing up against a side which you beat well, and you say, right, we're not going to focus on the fact we beat a side well last year. That's the first mistake that often people make, because it puts loads of pressure on. Instead, what are our intentions for the game? How do we want to play? What are the things that we're looking for? And at the end of this presentation, I'm going to talk about blocks. And blocks means, what's your game going to look like in the first game? What things are we going to focus on? It's not going to be the whole of the game. It's going to be things like, did we generate quick ball in rucks, for instance? Did we get the ball to the winger? That might be the first game. By Christmas, you may add some complexity onto that. And that's where the winning looks like. From your player's point of view, don't downplay winning, but make sure it doesn't become the thing. It's things like, great, at half-time, we generated some much better quick ball than last week. Or I'm really pleased with you for generating that quick ball. What can we do differently? Or we wanted to create quick ball. What went wrong? What can we do differently? And then you've got a second half to win that part of the battle. And then the scoreboard, you probably heard many times, takes care of itself. I think that fitness is something that we need to downplay and upgrade. Now, the reason why I say downplay is, don't make the session about fitness. Make it about playing better rugby, enjoying rugby, so you're pushing the players. Because at under 14, some of the players will naturally be fit. They'll naturally love running around the pitch and running. And other players, because they're growing, will find fitness really hard work. And This is where you will find that players will drop out of the game because they won't feel they're fit enough. So the upgrade is to help players who are not as fit enjoy the game without putting them under too much pressure. They're not going to become enormously fitter by coming to rugby. They're going to become fitter by lots of other things. Rugby will be part of that journey. What are the new laws? You're probably very aware of them. You've been thinking about them for a long time in preparation. So let's pick out some of the key things in here. An extra couple of players on the pitch, I don't think makes an enormous amount of difference in terms of the style of play. What I do think it means is that the extra 2 players, let's say you've got your, just as an example, your 13 best players on the pitch, the extra 2 players won't touch the ball that much more than the other 13 players. So it just means that there is slightly less involvement, ironically, for players, but they're still on the pitch, and that's good. Instead of playing within the 5-meter lines, you're on a full pitch. As I said, I don't think that the pitch is fully exploited just because of the length of the pass and the sense of wanting to pass, but it does make it a lot more tiring. They look tiny on the pitch. This is a big tactical area. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that when I talk about it a bit. Kick at goal. I think, and this is my own view, is don't. And there's a reason for this, and it's just my own choice, is that it takes roughly 1 minute for a player to set up and kick for goal. Given all the other things involved, you could be wasting 90 seconds on a goal kick, which involves 1 player. Let's say you score 5-6 tries. That's potentially 6 to 8 minutes out of the game for goal kicks. Now, the opposition can choose to do it, but what does it add to the game? I just think that it's great for 1 player, but it often causes, right, it's my turn to kick. Probably for me, I would not worry about it too much at this stage, certainly not kick for penalties. Box kicks, well, I wouldn't coach it at this stage. I would leave that for later. There's so many other things that you should be doing. I think the key thing we're going to be talking about is we're moving to uncontested lineouts, and we're going to speak about that in a moment. Right, let's start with the skills, and inevitably you're thinking a lot about the tackle laws. I think under 14s is interestingly quite a different age group to coach new tackle than say under 8s, under 9s, or maybe under 16s to under 18s. And that's because naturally, to tackle low, you've got to be able to change your body shape, and that requires a strong core, and not every player is going to have a strong core. So they will naturally find it hard to arrive upright and then dip down if they haven't got a strong core and the ability to bend at the knee. So we're going to be challenged at under 14s to a little bit more, say, but for me, the key thing is be exact and focus on good technique, because good technique is safe technique. Now, on the site, we've got lots of stuff around the new tackle laws. For me, as a good cue, if you can see a player arriving and this is their upper body in here, the bend of the hips makes a difference. But if this shin angle is downwards, then they're more likely to go low. So notice the knee is beginning to point towards the ground. The shin angle will make a difference. Got some things around the skills focus in the links after the webinar. Now, the contact area is again absolutely key. These players are learning their new bodies, their ability to physically be more effective in the contact area. Now, what will happen is, here's your tackler here, and here's your ball carrier here. And as these ball players are becoming stronger, they will think that they can run through this player. New tackle laws, but everything points to the fact that we have got to try and encourage players to get to the edges. And this is going to be difficult. Again, we need to use training sessions and encourage players to get to the edge of the player. And that means that the supporting players need to be in a good position to support this offload. So we'll come back to that a bit later on. Now, the scrum focus, this is the second year of pushing. I would suggest that every player works on scrum profiles, whether they're forwards or backs. They are working on their scrum profiling in pretty much every session. Not for a long time. When you split forwards and backs, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment, you want to, we'll be focusing more on some of the scrum ideas, but get the profiling right, because as they go from 14 through to 18, these players will be changing position. England's vice captain, Ennis Genge, England under 18s, number 8. Now, England prop, I think they, if I remember rightly, Dan Cole, Leicestershire under 16s flanker. So give plenty of players a chance to at least get the profiling right. And the line-out focus, this year, you're not worrying about lifting or not necessarily about jumping. That's going to come later on. Find throwers. Lots of them. Give plenty of players a chance to throw in, because next year this will pay dividends. Right, let's move on to the next slide if I can get this to work. Tactical focus. All right, the lineouts, massive area. The new lineouts say you can have 7 players, or you can have up to 13 players in the lineout. There's no jump, well, sorry, there's no lift, and it's uncontested. So the hooker throws in to a player who can jump if they want. As long as it's straight, then as soon as they catch it and their feet are on the ground, it is like a normal game of rugby. Now, this area here causes unbelievable amounts of stress for referees and coaches, because as soon as this player catches him, that means that they are fair game to the defense. Now, there are 2 approaches here. One is that you have a sort of unwritten rule with in your team that you can then use with other teams, and that's to say, as soon as the players caught the ball and then they have brought it down to their body, so as it arrives at their body. So here's the player. Ooh, legs a bit short there. Body. Then the other players can tackle. But the thing is that you may have 3 or 4 teams which will agree with you and 3 or 4 teams which will disagree with you. So you've got to coach both ways. But generally, and this is just my idea, I will share the link with you from the RFU on all the rules around here. I would have a 2-player line-out only. And you throw the ball to the first player in the line-out, who then throws it immediately to 9, and then you throw it out to here, and you just use it purely as a restart. And then you play with the forwards rumbling it up like this. That's just my thought at the moment. The lineouts are not the place to launch a attack. It's the phase after the line out is when you launch attacks. So that's my suggestion. Now, scrums, on the other hand, you can have more set piece plays because the 9 on the opposition, if you're playing this way, and the ball is coming in here, so that's the opposition 9 here, they have to stay in line here. You've got 2 options. Your 8 can pick and run, or alternative, and they need to go right, by the way. Alternatively, you are then taking the ball out into the backs, and they've got that little extra room to play. So tactically, I would have, I just think that my experience with under 14s is play very simple plays here. Switches rarely work. And I would not, from scrums, use what we might call the block pass, because you have this room. So block pass is, here's 10, here's 12, here's, say, 13, and 12 runs in here, and the ball goes out the back to 13. It may work, but most likely, because the defense is so far away, it doesn't make much difference. Just use some simple plays, get the ball to the wing and restart. Now, if you've got a very talented group, you've got lots of time, then yeah, fill your boots with extra plays. Kicking strategy, have one. But the way to have it is to talk to your kickers about scenarios. Give them 3 or 4 scenarios to think about and do what we call the slow thinking before the game. If we're in our 22, what do we do? And it's not just one option. Oh, we'll always kick long, always kick to touch. It's if they are covering the touch, let's run it. If they're tired, let's run it. But let's understand what we're going to do beforehand. Let's do some slow thinking beforehand. Attack strategy. At under 14s, I would try and keep it as simple as possible. And just think in terms of slow ball, fast ball. I think that club rugby, anyone who's putting in a 3-3-1 or a 2-4-2 sort of structure is probably spending too much time on that aspect at the detriment of the core skills, which are going to make a difference to your team. So I would leave out anything too complicated. Just focus on, if the ball is slow from a ruck, what are we going to do? If it's fast from a ruck, what we do? And let's just have those simple plays and go from there. But as I said, the tactical focus should be broken into blocks. Your kicking strategy, you may have one kicking strategy by the first game. We'll just know what we're going to do if we're on a 22. By half term, you might say, when we get to the halfway line. From attack strategy, you might just say, if we have slow ball, this is what we're going to do. If we have fast ball, we'll just play and see what happens. But then as you get further into the season, we'll develop block, build those blocks. Shape of training. Let's say you've got 90 minutes. Set piece, line out. Develop your throwers, 5 mins. That's if you're playing a 2-player line out. But I would say that you'll need to have a catch and drive defense. Now, you may want to develop a catch and drive, a maul from the line out. I'm absolutely not against that. That's very much between you and your team. But I'm guessing that a number of teams will have a catch and drive. So your catch and drive defense. And the simplest catch and drive defense is form a scrum. As many players in a scrum position, tightly bound, driving forward. And that's why profiling or profiles are essential. And then you are building connections between the players. I've got some resources on that. Set piece, we'll say split forwards and backs. I think at this age, 15 minutes is the maximum I would spend. So you're spending a much more time on the skills and play. You've got to go back, and you've always got to be returning to catch and pass. You've got to be returning to tackle. You've got to be returning to rucks. These are all things you've got to keep coming back to. The maul stuff you'll do in the catch and drive defense. And then you do a bit of kicking as well alongside that. But I think that at least 10 to 15 minutes of every session should be a game of rugby. Now, if you're lucky, you've got 35 fit and willing players, but that'd be great. But generally, we probably don't have the full number. So in which case, let's slice up the game and let's play a game of rugby, which is a slice of the game. So we could be, it could be a 9v6 in a 30-meter box. And we're setting up a scenario. We're not just throwing the ball to the 9 players and playing go. Say, no, we're going to put 2 players on the floor here in a tackle and then play. Or we're going to have a 2v2 scrum here, and then we're going to play from there. So make it look like the game. Don't just throw the ball to one team and say play, because that's happens so rarely in the game. Let's set ourselves from scenarios and go with that. So my aim was to try and get this all done in 30 minutes. So a lot of the things here, I'm just throwing out ideas. The notes afterwards, I'll put some things in from the website. I think for an under-14 season, it's a really exciting time. It's a big change for them. They're playing on a full pitch. They've got an extra 2 players on the pitch. So it's going to start looking like what we imagine a game of rugby to look like, but with all those caveats that I mentioned that you have. So focus on blocks. What do we want to achieve by the first game? Half term. Christmas, March, and then build on that. That's your intention. We want to have maybe 1 play in place off a scrum. We want to have maybe the 8 picking up. Maybe we don't have the 8 pick up until half term. Maybe you have something slightly more sophisticated by Christmas, but you're not throwing it in now because the players can only take in so much at this stage. They've got lots of other things going on. It's going to be quite exciting for them. And also, depending on where you are, you're going to be bumping up against the private school problems with some of the players available, not available. So don't try and put too many tactical put-ups in there. Keep going back to the core skills. And tactics, yes, develop them, but keep coming back to these skills. Can we get them a little bit better? And that's where your wins are. Your wins are in skills. We're just doing this a little bit better. Look at what we're doing here. We've managed to make 3 great passes. We've got the ball outside their defensive line 3 or 4 times. That's fantastic. Or we've managed to create a bit better line speed in our defense. Because I say that 1 or 2 players can dominate the game, you've got to try and help build a team become about we, not me. Is that not without trying to be critical of maybe the player who's done the run, is say, can we build this into us as a group as opposed to you as a player? And this is trying to change them into becoming part of a club and a team situation. And that's why I think at under 14s, you're probably going to have maybe 1 or 2 new players who've not played rugby before joining, but most have been playing for a while. Rotate. This is my own view. This is what we did with Mumbles. Certainly took a lot of angst out of selection because it was just everyone had an equal chance of playing. rotate as much as possible. In the end, if we had, say, 20 players arrive, we gave every player a number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Obviously, we worked it out a little bit, and we say, right, 1 to 5, you're off. 6 to 20, you're on. And then after, say, 5 minutes, okay, 6 to 10, you're off. And the players would have to adjust. Sometimes we wouldn't have our number one, our best scrum half or our best 10 on the pitch. Well, that's fine, because they'll come back on in 5 minutes. So things will change, and it gives you a chance to keep players rotating around. And the other thing is, I talked about wins. If you're rotating and at the end of the game you haven't won the game, but everyone has played, you're taking out the thing. It doesn't matter about the score. Did everyone get a game? Yeah. Did everyone get lots of game time? Great. So what did we learn? So I just think that just changes the dynamic of what's going on and takes some stress out for you. Okay, I think the under 14s area is probably one of the biggest changes. I've done an under 15s and under 16s webinar. The changes in terms of what you're facing are less sophisticated now with the under 14s, bigger pitch, more players, the line out, players starting to think tactically, certainly growing. Some of these players will start to be involved with county and DPP programs. So it's a big change. So please feel free to contact me about that. I've BCC'd everyone on when I've put this out, but if anyone feels that they want to share their email with other people in the group, I know that that's been a very helpful thing for people to share their journeys. So I'm going to stop there. I've just gone over a couple of minutes by my target time. So if anyone wants to either unmute or throw into the chat area a question, then feel free. So if people are still thinking, that's great, Deb. Thank you very much for dropping in. Remember, try and get as many throwers as you can. That would be one thing. And also try and get at least 2 players who can play 9. 3 even better. And that's generally, I think from sort of 10 under 10s onwards, wouldn't say that we would spend too much time on position specific stuff, but I would say that anyone who's showing any aptitude towards being a scrum half, grab them and you're come along to training earlier. Let's get some 9 passes in, and encourage them to work off both hands and go home and pass the ball to their grandmothers, who I'm sure will be happy to take 50 passes every night if it's going to help their son or grandson to improve. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording. So I'm going to stick around if anyone's got any more